broadcast, The Rhythm. Go live, Vegas on the screen, feeling the flow, so pristine. Boom, as the beats align, electric dreams, they intertwine.
We just need to forget about everything, put away our problems, get along with each other.
All right, welcome on in, everybody. Student of the game, off and running on a Monday, and we are excited to do so. We are live from the Go Live Vegas studio, as always, on all of our video platforms through the social media channels, as well as the Go Live Vegas radio app. And pretty much a jam-packed day in content, really a jam-packed couple of days here on Go Live Vegas. Of course, we had the Game Day Huddle earlier with myself, Jimmy Garino, Steve Johnson, with a lot of insightful conversation and a lot of really just a productive conversation, given both the sports slate, given where we are at the NFL calendar, college football playoff, the baseball offseason, but tying that into the card markets as well is so cool. But of course, on Student of the Game, we really like to take the deep dive and dive into all aspects of the sports world, as we have been doing now for a couple of years. But what's so cool about doing it this time of year is now things are starting to come to light, and you're getting a little bit more clarity, both in terms of the positive and in terms of the negative outlooks for these teams in the hunt right now. But again, so much to talk about in terms of sports that are currently active, so much to talk about in sports that aren't even active. But again, before we do, be sure to like, subscribe, follow us on all of our video platforms, social media, download the Go Live Vegas radio app, and of course, catch all of our coverage. First Friday coverage live on the scene, our live remotes, everything with the Portnoy Gallery that we've done recently. A lot of exciting stuff on the horizon for Go Live Vegas. So just a very important and crucial time to join in our family and networks as we continue to push forward. And that's what we will do here today. Again, plenty to talk about. Big NFL Week 15. Obviously, we're going to start there. But at this point in the football season, we know who the contenders and the pretenders are, right? We didn't need to wait till Week 15 to determine that. But given the nature of the season, given the war of attrition that an NFL regular season so often is, and given the fact that now you are seeing teams face the injury bug, face adversity, and really trying to carve their identity, we are seeing that all come into the fold now, and no better game was an example of just that than yesterday's Buffalo-Detroit affair. You have the Lions, 11 straight. Buffalo dropping 2 straight. The 2 best offenses in the league. The 2 hottest quarterbacks in the NFC and the AFC, respectively, with Josh Allen, as of right now, being the MVP frontrunner. With the conclusion of yesterday's game, that is very much the case. More on that in a minute. But that type of matchup, and we talked about it earlier on the show in the Game Day Huddle. We talked about it last week before the game. That type of matchup, which serves as very much a Super Bowl preview, those are often hard to gauge because you don't know, given how both teams are in playoff position, right? Buffalo beats Kansas City, but the way it's looking, as long as the Chiefs keep winning, they're going to be the number 2 seed. Detroit is in great position for the number 1 seed. They still hold that with the tiebreaker advantage over Philadelphia. So, safe to say, both teams are going to be fine in the grand scheme of things, at least in terms of their placement in the postseason. But these type of matchups are often hard to predict because, for one, it was a high-powered matchup. You have Buffalo, who had not faced an offense anywhere near the caliber of Detroit, and you have a Detroit Lions defense who is brutally banged up and hasn't faced a quarterback or an offense anywhere near the caliber of Buffalo's. So when you have that predicament, there's a little bit of a sense of drama until the game actually unfolds. And at that point, all you can hope for is a good game. Was it a good game? I'll say it was an entertaining game. But here's what I want to open with. What we saw yesterday, despite Detroit being able to answer Buffalo every time, We saw a Buffalo Bills team full-blown take it to the Lions. And now we sit here on a Monday morning where not only are we wondering how good the Lions actually are, we're wondering if we maybe didn't put enough stock in the Bills. Now, Josh Allen, that's different. MVP frontrunner, the conversation now is only expanded in the last 24 hours. But when you look at how balanced this Buffalo team is, when you look at the fact that their weapons, they take a sum of the parts type of approach. They may not have a true barn burner, household name, number one X type of receiver, but look at all the people they brought in. Khalil Shakur having a great season. A lot of people thought last year that Shakir was going to be the dark horse. He's well beyond that now. He is their most productive skill player, not named Josh Allen, by far. But then you see the drafting of Keon Coleman and Dawson Knox, who's been there for a while, and he has to do more because Dalton Kincaid is hurt. And we see James Cook, who's ultimately been the difference. We saw semblances of that last year. But what we are seeing is a Buffalo offense that has been balanced all year long, that continues to be balanced, and now they're doing it against the elite competition. Because we saw them do it against the Rams, and that was on a losing effort. But then they flip it around a week later and get right back on track. And looking at the Bills' record, looking at their number 2 seed in the AFC, I really don't care if Kansas City's better right now. I don't care if Kansas City continues to win and if Kansas City ends the regular season locked in with the first-round bye at the number 1 seed. You watch both teams play football right now and even take away the head-to-head matchup earlier in the year in which Buffalo won. Guys, the Bills are the better team. I've said it on this network. I've said it on social media now for the past couple of weeks. If you strip away everything that Mahomes has done, the legacy, the resume, the accolades, everything, and that's hard to do because at this point, all of those things are synonymous with the current league. Patrick Mahomes and the Kansas City Chiefs are the face of the league currently. And until someone dethrones them, that is going to continue to be the case. But if you simply watch the games, there's no debate right now. If you took a football novice, if you took someone who doesn't even like the game, had him sit down on a Sunday afternoon and watch both those two teams play without any context of the past, of what they've done in the recent future, and of what their prospects are, everyone's going to say Buffalo. And you don't have to be a football genius, a football expert to know that number 17 in the blue and white is the best football player on the planet right now. Mahomes has the accolades. Lamar Jackson's probably the best pure athlete, the most dynamic player as far as presenting him to a defense. But in terms of quarterbacking, playing the position, not only is no one playing it better than Josh Allen right now, I can't remember the last time we have seen someone play it this sharply, this crisp. Because last week, 6 touchdowns, that's cool and all. But you lose to the Rams, and ultimately the conversation surrounding you is, can you get back on track? A lot of people thought that wouldn't be the case going on the road to Ford Field in Detroit. And look what happened. Now, Detroit's offense was absolutely stellar. We could do this whole first segment on how good Jared Goff and the play-action passing attack was. They went up and down the field with very little resistance as well. But Buffalo getting that early lead, Buffalo sitting on that lead, even with the productivity of that offense for Detroit, this one was never in doubt. It was only a matter if Detroit could actually cut the deficit under 7 or under 6. And in the very end, we saw them do that. And it came down to an onside kick attempt. But you have the onside kick earlier in the fourth quarter when they were starting to shorten that gap, which only allowed Buffalo to expand the lead even more. We saw Buffalo early on. Buffalo did not hesitate to get those insurance points early on in the game. Everything Buffalo needed to do, they did to a T. And they fired on all cylinders offensively with the best player in football leading the way. So, in terms of how you look at Detroit and Buffalo moving forward, maybe you come back down to earth a little bit on Detroit, and you realize, okay, Buffalo is better than I realized. But no one should be waking up this Monday morning or going about their Monday afternoon thinking, I wonder who the MVP is for the 2024 NFL season. There's no debate anymore. And I get it. Saquon Barkley has been incredible. We see the value. We see the difference he makes. We, at least those who followed the game, knew that was likely to be the case. And Saquon Barkley is going to be right there in the mix, and he has a strong case for it. But again, much like we'll talk about the Heisman Trophy in a little bit, use the eye test. Look at what he is doing. Look at how he is spreading the ball around. They're running QB reads. basic zone reads and QB keepers with Josh Allen, their franchise guy, who's a stud from the pocket. Normally, when you got a franchise guy who's a stud from the pocket, you don't need to do reads and QB keepers. But when you have an athlete of that magnitude, you damn sure should. Baltimore, the more they use Lamar Jackson's legs, the more it benefits them as a team. The Chargers, the more they use Justin Herbert's legs, it benefits them as a team. So now you have Josh Allen, who's always had an affinity to run and take off and make big plays happen, sometimes recklessly so, sometimes because he needed to improvise. But now we're seeing it as a plan of attack. What Buffalo is doing now, there is very little improvisation. It is all methodical execution, attacking every part of the field, down the numbers, outside the numbers, down the seam, intermediate, shallow, deep. The running back's out of the backfield. The offensive line is protecting well. And even when they don't and the play breaks down, you have a quarterback with the mobility, the toughness, and the size and the incredible arm talent to make it happen anyway. And yes, a lot of these things we have said or are saying about Josh Allen, we have already said about Patrick Mahomes. But at the same time, we don't judge quarterbacks on a year-by-year basis based off their legacy. We could sit here till we're blue in the face and talk about Tom Brady being the GOAT. No doubt about it. Tom Brady wasn't the best quarterback every waking second of his NFL career, week in, week out. There's ebbs and flows to this right now. And right now you have Mahomes, who's hobbled, right? Came out earlier today, Ian Rappaport, NFL Network. High ankle sprain, but it's considered moderate, going to be a day-to-day type of basis how they take it. And I don't expect anyone to doubt the Chiefs. I don't expect anyone to doubt Mahomes when the pressure's on. They play, assuming it would be in Arrowhead if Kansas City holds on the number 1 seed. Buffalo plays the Chiefs in Arrowhead. A lot of people are going to be on Kansas City there. I get it. It's hard to break away from reputation. It's hard to break away from preconceived notions. But what are your eyes telling you? What my eyes tell me is that this is a Kansas City team that brutally struggles with pass protection, particularly on the outside. We know the interior of the offensive line is very sound. But now you have Tooney, the left guard, having to kick out and play left tackle. You have your guards, your all-pro caliber guards, protecting on the perimeter because that has been such a liability for you all season long. And when the team lives and dies essentially by the performance of Mahomes, even if that performance isn't MVP caliber, you're going to need that protection. Right now, they don't have it. Everything that Kansas City is struggling with, Buffalo, at least on the offensive side of the ball, Buffalo is excelling at. Now, again, we saw that Detroit offense tear through Buffalo's defense. Detroit's offense is going to do that to most defenses they play against, especially given the nature of the play-action pass and how good Goff is at these route concepts under Ben Johnson. That's not a surprise. But when the Buffalo offense, an offense that used to be strictly dependent on everything that Josh Allen did, a team that he used to have to backpack, now they are complimenting Josh Allen. It's going both ways. Josh Allen's play allows the James Cooks of the world and the Khalil Shakirs of the world to thrive. But them relieving Josh Allen when they need to is only making him better and better. We see the drop in turnovers. There's been a lot of years where Josh Allen has been a human highlight reel and has produced insane numbers. Notice how this year it's a little more efficient. He doesn't have to force it. He doesn't have to make everything happen himself. He has the help. And this is with a team that has never really had an offensive identity, a true offensive identity until this year. They've had good coordinators with Daboll, but that was still a few years back when they didn't have the running game. Now you see Joe Brady. McDermott's a defensive guy. McDermott's always going to be a defensive guy. But when you have a Joe Brady at the helm who has emphasized balance and covering all your bases for an offensive attack, when you add that in the mix, we are now seeing different results. And it's coming at a time where we thought the window for the Buffalo Bills, much like it seems to be the case for the 49ers and some of these other teams, we thought the window was going to be closed. We thought personnel-wise, right, in terms of the receiving talent, they were going to be the worst they've been in years since they drafted Josh Allen, or at least since Josh Allen really picked up his game about 3-4 years ago. We thought that was going to be the case. And we just continue time and time again to be surprised by this team. And I get it. We should be when they play that well. But we also shouldn't stop and think, this is just out of the blue. This is a random trend. They're going to come back down to earth. No. At this point, it is probably better advised to be somewhat apprehensive about Kansas City and to be a lot more bullish about Buffalo. Now, again, it's all going to come down to the quarterback. Pretty much everyone's going to vote in a head-to-head, Andy Reid in the postseason over Sean McDermott. And I get it. Even with Allen likely to win the MVP, a lot of people, assuming he's healthy, are still going to go in route of Mahomes when talking about the playoffs. That's fine. And until it happens, that honestly probably should be the case. But now that constant feeling of, oh, the Bills are cursed, the Chiefs aren't, right? And even with the Chiefs still find ways to escape and win. Yesterday they won big. That was the first time they've won big in a while. But there's something to be said about a team who finds ways to win. Just like in the past, there was something to be said about Buffalo, who seems to always find ways to lose it, whether it be the fake punt last year, right? Travis Kelce, 13 seconds, about 3 years ago. What was it, 2021 in that incredible game, which was kind of Josh Allen's coming out party, right? All these things history points, the trends point to Kansas City doing it again. And a lot of people are going to hang their hat on that notion once more. But now, here we are, 15 weeks in the season, mid-December. The playoff picture is starting to formulate, starting to take shape. Now it's time to place some conviction here, or to work up some conviction here and place it somewhere. And I'm not saying based off of what they did against Detroit. Sure, they lost their two before taking on Detroit, right? They had the big snow game, and then Buffalo kind of gets into a little bit of a slump, it seems like. Well, that ended quickly. So I'm not saying you should fire every future ticket on the betting board or on whatever mobile app you use for Buffalo and act like Kansas City is done. But look at where we are right now. Look at what you're seeing from the Bills and their quarterback. Look at what you're seeing from the Chiefs and theirs. A lot of times, this is riding on the wall. And it's not riding on the wall because Kansas City is winning close. They've been doing that for years. The riding on the wall is the fact that this time there may be a team who could capitalize on that, on the fact that Kansas City isn't dominant. Last year, they weren't dominant. Buffalo couldn't capitalize. Baltimore couldn't capitalize. You have to start wondering if now we finally have a team, a quarterback, an offensive philosophy that can keep Kansas City down when they're down. Because that's the biggest problem with the Chiefs. You give them a little bit of breathing room, a little bit of life, and they make you pay for it. This Buffalo team, who already has a win over them and is only playing better and better since they first met in the season, maybe now there's reason to believe that Buffalo team is that nemesis, is that opposition. But again, we don't know. History repeats itself bad in this game. That's why it makes the Lions-Eagles potential NFC game so intriguing, because unlike the Chiefs and the Bills, we don't have something, whether it be this year or the recent past, to go off of. Those two teams barely ever play, and since they've both been truly relevant in the NFC playoff picture the past couple of years, they haven't met, at least when it's all on the line in postseason fashion. And now here we are on a Monday morning, and I talked about it last week. The Lions coming down. The offense is there. The quarterback production is there. But when you have a defense that banged up, 13 guys on IR, and now you add David Montgomery into the list, who is so crucial to that offense with what he does, balancing out Jahmyr Gibbs and everything he brings to the table, that two-headed monster that only helps Goff, the best play-action quarterback in the game. So now you have defensive issues that have plagued you all season long, at least since, the mid-season point, or really since Aiden Hutchinson got hurt, even before that. You already had those, but you worked around that. Now your offense, the thing that is essentially your contingency plan, your insurance policy, now that's hurt. Can Detroit beat Philadelphia if they play the way they played yesterday at Ford Field in the playoffs? Do I think they could? Yes, because I believe in Jared Goff. But here's the thing. The defense has to show up. You struggle that way against Buffalo, and the way Philadelphia's looking with Jalen Hurts and those receivers, they quieted a lot of people yesterday. Saquon Barkley's right there in the MVP race with Josh Allen. And on top of it, Philadelphia's defense is the best in the league, way better than Buffalo's is. So if Detroit loses a game at home against the Bills where their defensive injuries really ultimately make the difference because they couldn't stop Allen and that offense at all, so much to the point where they were kicking an onside kick with 12 minutes remaining in regulation because they pretty much just told the world, we can't stop them. Well, you're probably going to have trouble, hypothetically speaking, with those injuries, which is the case right now. You're probably going to have trouble stopping Philadelphia as well. And Philadelphia is a lot harder to go up and down the field every offensive possession to finding the end zone as a result of all that, it's a lot harder of a pill to swallow when you're tasked against the Eagles as opposed to the Bills. Because if there's one thing the Bills have, it's the ability to score. They may not stop you. The Eagles can stop you and then put one in at will. That's why this is getting interesting. On paper, in a perfect scenario, those two teams match up very, very well. But right now, one team is healthy and the other team isn't just hurt, they are decimated. So not only are we in a position where now the Eagles kind of, despite Detroit having the number one seed, we are not only in a place where the Eagles kind of bump up to number one as far as the conversation regarding the NFC landscape. We are now even wondering if Detroit's going to be the solid number two. Now, when it's all said and done, I think they're actually going to finish with the first seed. Maybe they fall behind Philly because they drop one more to a Minnesota or something like that. It depends on how their defense plays. In fact, we talked about on the show earlier this morning with Steve and Jimmy, do they sit some of their guys down, knowing they already stand in good position for the playoffs, even if they don't get the number one seed? Are you better off dropping some of those games, resting your guys, getting everyone back? Because a lot of those guys aren't even active to be, unlimited snaps or considered questionable. They're full-blown ruled out. So at this point, wasting games like that for Detroit isn't going to do you a whole lot either, especially since Philadelphia is going to really try to get that number one seed if they have that opportunity. I don't think that's going to be the case. I think Dan Campbell's too aggressive, and I think Detroit, as a team, as an organization, is too kind of collectively all in at this point to let that happen, and I think they would really like to get some of that momentum back. But in the process of these next couple of weeks, if you don't get guys drastically more healthy and get guys at the very least back into the rotation, well, then there's no reason to be optimistic about your playoff outlook when everyone else by comparison is healthy. And that includes teams in your division, teams that you will be seated higher than, but teams that you may not want to play again. Minnesota, you have to play again in the regular season. That's not a team you want to play in the playoffs if your defense is struggling with injuries, with those receivers, with that passing attack and those route concepts. Are you kidding me? Let alone Philadelphia, the hottest team in the league right now, or even Green Bay, a team that Detroit not struggled with, but a team that played Detroit tough just a week and a half ago on Thursday Night Football and had a great performance offensively last night on the road at Seattle? Do I think Detroit's a better team? Yes, in a perfect scenario, but we're not looking at a perfect scenario right now. In fact, it's the exact opposite for Detroit. And it seems like every other team right now, maybe not in terms of positioning, but in terms of health and in terms of even momentum, as much as that's probably thrown around too loosely in football conversation and football commentary, you have teams that in those categories are trending upward at a rapid rate, where the Lions seem to be falling back down to earth simply because at this point of the year, availability is everything. And the Lions just don't have it, at least on defense. And what we saw yesterday, that's not going to be good enough. Jared Goff was just under 500 yards and threw 5 touchdowns, and they lost. Now, this is also a team that won when Jared Goff threw 5 picks. But you look at that game, right? That Sunday night game against Houston, you go back and rewind the clock a little bit. Look at how great the defense played. That's before they began to get decimated by the injuries, before the secondary was just completely thinned out. And even the D-line that they had, who was doing their best to fill in the void left by Hutchinson, they were a lot of those guys were still out there. Because that was weeks ago, months ago at this point. So, yeah, Detroit's kind of hard to figure out in that regard. The things that we know they do well, that's not a mystery. But they did it better than practically anyone in football all year long yesterday, playing offense, and they still came up short. What does that tell you? Well, I think it'll tell you again that Josh Allen is hands down the MVP, but it'll more so tell you when you have a defense that is that hurt, that banged up, and is facing any type of elite quarterback, let alone the MVP, it's going to be a long day. Now, Sam Darnold, elite? No. Is Jalen Hurts elite? I guess it depends on your definition. But boy, are they productive, and boy, are they looking good right now. And they're going to be in your vicinity. They're going to be on the road ahead. Because now, the regular season with each passing week becomes less and less important, where the postseason becomes more and more important. And there's no tomorrow with the postseason, right? You have injuries in the back end. Josh Allen goes off. You live to fight another day. Dan Campbell makes a questionable coaching decision at a crucial part in the game. It's okay. You live to fight another day. Eventually, you are not going to. And that just goes to show how the NFL is so much of a marathon, not a sprint, as cliche as that may sound. But when you have this much to deal with and this much to overcome, it doesn't usually go your way unless it's an even playing field. And the only way at this point to make it an even playing field in the NFC is to wipe out all of Minnesota's defensive talent, to wipe out Philadelphia's defensive talent, to wipe out Green Bay's defensive talent, Tampa Bay's, and everyone in between. Because that's where Detroit is at right now, which is crazy to think because just a few weeks ago, a lot of people, the media, the fans, the entire football collective, a lot of people would have taken Detroit and any day of the week and twice on a Sunday, twice on a playoff Sunday. And some people were even taking Detroit over the field in the NFC. That's how good they were looking. Even with Philadelphia still playing well just a couple weeks ago, people were that sold on the Lions. And it just goes to show how quickly it could change, how quickly it could go south. Really quick, we actually have a guest today, Kel Dansby, longtime friend of the show. Didn't want to bury that too much into the back end. But before we get to Kel, I do want to touch on this really quick. Now, we talk about the MVP in NFL. Usually there isn't much debate unless it's kind of like a two-man race. And right now, it's not looking like a two-man race. Barkley may be there, but since it's so quarterback specific anyway, I wouldn't feel confident about anyone else in the race unless they were a quarterback at this point, because it just seems to be the way it always works. I wouldn't hate Barkley winning the MVP, but given what Allen is doing, it's kind of hard to go a different direction. The Heisman Trophy, however, a lot of times there's a debate to be had. And I just want to say that before we go to break. We'll get Kel on. We'll touch a little bit on this. There's so much to talk about with Kel. Of course, the big fight slate coming up in the fight weekend in both MMA and boxing. So we'll get to that as well. But I just wanted to say there's a lot of pushback as far as who hoisted the trophy, who won the award on Saturday night. Travis Hunter, that's the closest race, edging out Ashton Jeanty by a couple hundred votes. The closest race since 2009. Remember that great Mark Ingram, Toby Gerhart year? It was that type of race for the Heisman. And I just want to say before we get out of here, or at least get ready to go talk to Kel, the definition of the Heisman Trophy at the end of the day is the most outstanding player in college football. The reason we sometimes get caught up in this discourse is because we don't know what clearly constitutes the most outstanding player in college football. Some years, it's the guy with the best statistical production, the guy who dominated on a week-by-week basis, who was unstoppable, could not be contained, and if you look at his stat line, game by game, it's better than any other player in the country, regardless of program or position. You want to talk about it from that angle, the clear-cut winner is obviously Jeanty. No question. There was not a single more productive player in college football than him this year. But the reason why Hunter got it is because sometimes there are exceptions, and usually those exceptions come in the form of a generational athlete. Jayden Daniels, week by week, was not the most productive player in college football last year. You can make the case Penix earned that honor more. Penix had more value to his team, at least the way it looked on the surface, right? Undefeated, conference champion, spot in the college football playoff. They beat Texas, they get to the national championship. You could say there was not a single more valuable player to his team last year than Michael Penix Jr., and we saw him lose to the flashier guy who had the better highlight reel, not to diminish Jayden Daniels in any way. Jayden Daniels' resume was not as good as Penix's last year, but I truly believe he was the rightful Heisman, because as good as Penix played, no one in the country was better on a football field than Daniels. It is the same exact thing this year, and we have seen that the past couple years. We saw it in 2022 with Caleb Williams. That USC team was average, at least in the grand scheme of things. But when you have a player that undeniable, when you have a player that gifted, who separates himself that much, it's hard not to give it to him. And that's why in years past, we've had certain years where that's not the case, right? Lamar Jackson and Johnny Manziel, years after they won it, they in many ways even topped their performance from the year before. But their teams weren't as good. They weren't competing for a conference championship or, a BCS for Manziel's case or a college football playoff case for Jackson's case. They weren't in contention for that in their follow-up year where they tried to become, a back-to-back Heisman winner a la Archie Griffin. It didn't work out for him, even though you can make the case that they were the most electrifying players in the country. Some years, it doesn't. Some years, the Jameis Winstons will get it, right? The undefeated freshman who's led his team to the number one spot in the nation. We saw Baker Mayfield, incredible year in 2017. He edges out Lamar and everyone else in the field because Oklahoma and what the Sooners were doing that year was so undeniable. They were in the playoffs, in the Rose Bowl, right? Conference champions. Sometimes that's enough. And that's why there are some years where a Dylan Gabriel will win it, given what he's done to his team, given where he has the Oregon Ducks situated right now, and given how amazingly consistent he has been all year long. It just depends on the field. And I know that seems a little wishy-washy. It seems a little inconsistent, but it doesn't, because when the focus is the most outstanding player, the circumstances will vary depending on who that player plays for. That's why Travis Hunter, people have a hard time grasping he could win it over Ashton because the productivity isn't there. Yes, but watch the tape. Look at Travis Hunter lock down half of the field playing cornerback. Look at Travis Hunter and the routes and the catches and the contested catches and the athleticism he displays, running routes and doing these things technically as a wide receiver. And we see the value he brings to his team, which may not be a Boise State Broncos one loss, undefeated in the conference championship, and number 4 seed in the playoffs. No, the Buffs didn't even win the Big 12, and they're going to be playing a random bowl game now. Completely random, right? Just like Cam Ward in Miami will be. It's one of those things where you have to clean the slate each year because you can't just say, oh, well, this player won it because he was undefeated and in the playoff. But this player won it because he had 4 losses but was just straight up better than everyone else, like a Caleb Williams or a Jaden Daniels. This is where I think we sometimes gloss over. This is what we gloss over too often when talking about the Heisman. We look at it as who was the best on a week-by-week approach, who was the best at the end of the season, who had the best stats, almost as if it's like a fantasy football type of award. It doesn't always mean that. It can, and to anybody who's thinking that Ginty should have won the Heisman, that's a fair point, and it warrants the discussion. I myself thought there was a good chance he would win it, but as we got closer and closer to that Saturday, this past Saturday in New York, the stars just seemed to align. And it just seemed like kind of like Jaden Daniels last year or Caleb Williams 2 years ago, it kind of seemed like even though they were not the most relevant quote-unquote players remaining in the field, given the fact they were just going to be playing some random bowl game and that's it, and in the case of the quarterbacks I just mentioned going off into the draft, right? That sometimes it holds a lot of weight, and sometimes it's something that could be put to the back burner. It just depends on the ebbs and flows of the college football season in any given year. And this year, the most outstanding player in the country only got his team so far. There are other players who were finalists in New York who got their teams way further. But again, ask yourself, does that make them in a team sport and in a sport where everything is different based off a region, conference, schedule, and everything in between, does that really make them the more outstanding player? And if you say, well, yes, it does, well, you actually have a pretty good argument, but you have to look at it from both sides. And you have to realize that as good as Ginty was every single week, what Travis Hunter was doing was unprecedented. And to become the first two-way player to win it since 1997, Charles Woodson, we think he's likely going to be a corner coming out in the draft. Receivers at this point are getting paid more money, but there's a premium for receivers in the league. You know, depending on the quarterback situation of the team he goes to, that could swing things as well. But when is the last time we debated about a player, what is he going to play when he does get drafted? We know what Ginty's playing. We know what Dylan Gabriel's playing. We know what Cam Ward's playing. And again, a lot of you are going to say, but Brett, that's not what the Heisman Trophy is all about. Says who? It's the most outstanding player in college football. It's not the best prospect. It's not the best statistical production. It is the most outstanding player. What defines the most outstanding player in college football changes year by year. But for my money, this year, the definition of that was Travis Hunter. Man. This is always a fun weekend or like a fun Monday morning after a weekend in football because it almost feels like with the Heisman and everything with the bowl season set, you're getting closer and closer to the NFL playoffs. There's an element of finality to it, but then you stop decompress and take a breath and realize we still have so much more to be done. And of course, as we get deeper and deeper into the bowl season, we'll break down that college football playoff, the 12-team bracket more and more. A lot of takes there, a lot of opinions, a lot of conversation regarding the teams, regarding the seeding, regarding some of those prospects, some of those Heisman finalists who are going to be in the mix as well. So that's going to be a lot of fun. But before we get there, we have to talk to Kel Dansby. He's been a busy man on the combat sports front of the Uncrowned over at Yahoo. Kel, a longtime friend of the show. He has a lot to say in terms of what's happening in the cage, what's happening in the ring, and also what has happened recently on the golf course. He has some big news on that front. We'll talk to Kel coming up on the other side. Don't go anywhere. It's Student of the Game on Go Live Vegas.
Vegas Studios, a unique multi-camera social media virtual content creators paradise. We offer high-end services using live streaming and film production for your personal or corporate, commercial or event and campaign needs. Pre-record or live stream to your audience on multiple social media platforms simultaneously. Fun and interactive with social media comments, phone lines, live remotes, audio Foley sounds, and Snapchat filters. Be creative, get recognized, and make money. We help you by providing an all in-house production team. Visit our website at golive.vegas.
What are you doing here, Danny?
What am I doing? I'm doing a commercial for Hand and Spa. Hey everyone, people are always asking me after a great podcast like we had yesterday, what do I do to relax? I go to Hand and Stone Spa for my massage. There's nothing better than Hand and Stone, believe me. Let me take you in. Okay, we're in. Look at how beautiful this place is. You got a relaxing sitting area. Beautiful front of the spa. Everybody taking care of you. Everybody's friendly. You feel relaxed. And that's why I come here. After a hard podcast, I come here to relax, get a massage. They take care of me every time. So gotta come here. I'll show you the rest of the building. I'll show you one of the rooms. Prime Solver is ready for his massage. Just relax. Let me put my face here so I can just relax and have an enjoyable massage. This is great. Everybody's got to come to Hand and Stone Massage. Shh, I gotta be quiet. There's other people in the room. Shh.
All right. Keeping it rolling here. We'll have Kel Dansby join us in just a second. We're getting him queued up here on Student of the Game. Again, quick reminder to like, subscribe, and follow us on all of our social media platforms. Go ahead and go download that Go Live Vegas radio app. And, of course, be sure to follow us, not just in terms of our video content and our live shows, our podcasts, and everything going down on our various platforms, but also to stay in the loop of what we have coming up. We have a lot of exciting stuff in terms of live remotes, in terms of public appearances, in terms of some live broadcasting, in terms of different potential, relationships and affiliations coming that could potentially materialize here in the next few weeks. So an exciting time to be a part of the Go Live Vegas family, and a very exciting time to be in the mix here on Student of the Game. And if, I kept you around after my yammering about Josh Allen and Travis Hunter and everything in between, don't worry, because now we will freshen it up. He joins us now, senior social editor of Uncrowned over at Yahoo Sports, the new combat sports wing. And joining us now is a longtime combat journalist, podcaster, and friend of the show, Kel Dansby, who normally we just jump right into the fights, Kel. But given some of the news I got yesterday, we may have to even touch in the links as well.
Yeah, listen, you can start wherever you want. I guess I'm a shoo-in on the links.
Absolutely, apparently. And for all of those watching on any of our video platforms, you see it there, right there, the lower third, Kel Ace Dansby. That is what he will be known on the show now until further notice. So for all of you listening on the radio app, just know that is what we are going with by now. And maybe on the whole first name basis, I may have to just drop Kel and start calling him Ace. We'll actually elaborate on exactly what we're talking about in a little bit. But before we get to that, Kel, obviously a huge week in combat sports. It was a big weekend this past weekend. You had upsets in boxing. You had a notable fight in the UFC on television, on ESPN2 no less, given all the festivities going on in the college football world. And of course, this week, all building up towards the epic rematch, a rematch that no one seems to be talking about, but maybe is as crucial and as awesome and as epic as any rematch you could possibly book in the sport of boxing. So we'll get to that. But really quick, Kel, you are known to always have an opinion on the world of college football, really any sport, period. But the reason why I wanted to pick your brain on this, at least a little bit, is because this is something I talked about on the show I host earlier here on Go Live Vegas, and something I talked about right in the last segment, how the definition of the Heisman Trophy being the award given to the most outstanding player in the sport, that often changes based off of the crop, the field of finalists we see, right? So some years it may be the quarterback who is the undefeated, one loss maybe tops, who has the conference championship, who is clearly meant more to his team than anyone else, and that value and that performance has him in the college football playoff. Other years it's the guy with 3 or 4 losses on his record who simply gets it because if you turn on the tape, he is better at playing football than everyone else. And sometimes it's a combination of a group of 5 team with a great running back like an Ashton Jeanty, who is tremendous from week 1 to right now as he finds himself in the playoff, yet finishes behind Travis Hunter in the Heisman voting in what was an incredibly close race. I just have to ask you right off the bat, did the Heisman committee get it right with who ultimately hoisted the trophy in New York this past Saturday?
100%. Mm-hmm. In fact, it was too close. It shouldn't have been only 2 votes, or 200 votes. Mm-hmm. Like, it's great what Ginty was able to do. It was nearly Sanders-esque, mm-hmm. but it wasn't Sanders-esque.
Right.
If he had put up the best season we've ever seen from a running back, he may have had a point. Mm. But he didn't. A top 3 season, top 4 season for a running back in NCAA history.
Yeah.
And that's great. And most years, that's enough to win the Heisman. We've seen it. We've seen running backs with lesser stats, maybe more impact, win the Heisman. Mm-hmm. Forwards with lesser numbers on the board. But this is like trying to win the MVP when Shohei Ohtani's in your league.
Right.
It's just, yeah, sure, you have to do something spectacular. You have to do something like Aaron Judge did, where set the AL home run record. Or you have to do something historical to beat this type of person out. Because Travis Hunter, going both ways, I understand it's not the pros, but college is not high school.
Yeah.
Not meant to play both sides of the ball, let alone at an elite level.
There's a reason why you get recruited to play one position coming out of high school. The coaches may have you eventually switch positions, but you get recruited for a particular purpose to play one role. Exactly.
And if you do, say the coach says, yes, you can play multiple positions. Mm-hmm. I believe Warren at Penn State has like 4 positions.
Yeah, that's true too. But it's on one side of the ball.
And he's great. Yeah.
Yes.
And he's great. And he's the best tight end in the nation for my money.
I'm with you.
The kid at Michigan, puts up a good case.
Yeah.
But I think Warren's the best tight end.
Yep.
Sure. He's the best running back. There's no case other than that. When you look at Travis Hunter, he's this season the best receiver in college football.
Yes.
This season. It's great. Arizona, that makes a case, and he's going to be drafted as the top pure wide receiver overall. You have the freshmen who hit the ground running, and they were amazing.
Yeah, from Alabama, Oklahoma, or Ohio State. Yep.
Yeah, from San Jose State, who I think led in everything. But that was a smaller school, lesser competition. So when you look at this, purely on the landscape of what he did, he was the best receiver in football.
He won the Biletnikoff
And
Award.
That's his secondary position.
Yep. He won the Biletnikoff Award and the Bednarik Award. If you just win one of those, it is considered monumental. To win both, that was almost every bit as impressive as the Heisman, because now you're tapping into respective awards that are specific to a position, or at least in terms of the Bednarik, is specific to a side of the ball. Heisman just
And he
has...
should have been the best DB.
Yes. Oh, no doubt. That was the biggest snub of all. Other than Scadaboo not getting invited to New York, Travis not winning the Jim Thorpe Award was an absolute travesty. I'm completely with you there.
Ridiculous.
Yeah.
His numbers were better than the 3 finalists.
No doubt. No doubt. And again, you look at the interception numbers. I love how in the NFL, we look at a guy's interception numbers like a Darrelle Revis during the prime years, a Sauce Gardner, a Quinyon Mitchell this year. And when we see that the interception numbers are low, we think, well, no wonder he's cutting off an entire side of the field and no one is testing him. Yet we try to use that against Travis. We try to move the goalpost. And let's be real, a lot of this, I talked about on the show we were hosting earlier today, a lot of it in terms of why he won has to do with Deion, not in terms of the performance, but in terms of the attention, and a lot to do with in terms of why, I guess you could say that he was so important was the exact same reason. Because you have a team that isn't necessarily particularly strong across the board. They obviously did a lot in the portal. They addressed some certain areas, but people weren't expecting much out of that Colorado team. And even though they finished where they finished in the Big 12, third or fourth, whatever it is, they get a mid-tier bowl game. Colorado was the story of the year. And he was the reason why. Even if he wasn't putting the team on his back offensively as a receiver, the plays, the catches, the routes, all of that only increased Shedeur Sanders' stock. It only increased the entire just brand, if you will.
He won 3 games single-handed
absolutely,
for Colorado.
Absolutely.
1 forced fumble at the goal line.
Yep. Against Baylor.
Another
against Baylor.
Against Baylor. Another with a reception where it was in the corner, and I don't know what Shedeur was way inside. It was like the most acrobatic catch of reaching across the body.
The North Dakota game earlier in the year. Yeah.
That's 2
incredible
right there.
Yep.
And then I'm counting the most recent game where he put up like 3 touchdowns and went crazy. Oh, and he had it pick that game as well.
Exactly.
He was a little machine. He won 3 games single-handed.
He literally scared offenses away from testing him, and he was unstoppable when Deion and company actually did let him play a major role in the offense and when Shedeur got him the ball.
Still had 4 interceptions.
Absolutely.
Because he would play cover 2.
Absolutely.
And just jump stuff that's not his man.
Yes, exactly. A lot of that is scheme, and so much of that also plays into it. And you mentioned there have been running backs who have had lesser years than Ashton who have won it. And there have been receivers and defensive backs with lesser years who have won the Heisman, who have won the Jim Thorpe Award, who have won the Biletnikoff, and they do it on a singular basis. This is a player who had a better year than all of them doing it on a two-way basis. I don't think people put enough stock into that because I think sometimes, again, Kel, people get caught in this trap where is it a statistical award? Is it like a fantasy football type of thing where, okay, he has the best stats this week, that week, and that week? Is it a value award? How far do you take your team? Is it a human highlight reel award? And the reason why this is a fun debate, because it changes. That's what I said right before we went to break to get you on. We'll see years where a Jaden Daniels wins it on an LSU team is quite frankly irrelevant, not a conference champion, out of the playoff picture, but you watch the tape and there's no better player. Then you'll turn around and you'll see a Baker Mayfield type of year who's has 1 loss on the record, a conference championship, incredible production, and he's in the college football playoff playing Georgia in the Rose Bowl. That's a year where, okay, Baker's going to win it. We've seen Manziel and Lamar Jackson play every bit as good in their second year, right? Or at least the year after winning the Heisman. And they didn't win it because they fell back down to earth as a team. It's not necessarily...
We've seen Reggie Bush share reps in the back.
Yes, with Lendale White. With Lendale White.
Wasn't even a true workhorse starter.
Yes.
Over Vince Young, who was his entire team.
Kel, Derrick Henry, all respect to the king, won it over Deshaun Watson, who was probably the single most impactful quarterback on his roster since, I don't know, Tim Tebow, Vince Young, maybe Manziel in his prime. Yep. And those Clemson teams obviously were a lot. Yeah, that's actually the best comparison. It would have been Cam Newton and Auburn because it was the one and done. Cam Newton was the team, right? That Clemson team.
started the Clemson dynasty.
Yeah,
no disrespect to
100%.
that before.
100%.
But he started that run.
He put them on
changed
the
culture.
he put them on the map with a loss in the national championship to Alabama. That same year, he lost the Heisman to Derrick Henry. Christian McCaffrey also lost the Heisman, and he broke the record of all records. Basically, like we talk about Jeanty not breaking Barry Sanders' record. McCaffrey actually broke it. Different record, but it was from Barry, and maybe the best single season we've had a non-quarterback ever had. And that wasn't enough. So it's not that the goalposts change. It's that you have to look at, it's not like a college football playoff selection criteria where it needs to remain the same. It needs to remain uniform year in and year out. Right.
This isn't the biggest running back robbery we see. Like, now that I'm thinking about it, now that you mentioned it.
Right.
McCaffrey should have won. Toby Gerhart probably should have won.
And this is the closest one since then when Ingram barely edged out Toby Gerhart. And I think the competition between Ingram and Gerhart was a closer debate than this one was. And we have to go back 14, 15 years to bring it up. So exactly. It's not diminishing. And even if you took a completely different stance, because me at one point, I thought Jeanty was actually going to win it, mainly because there was a stretch where Travis was a little hurt. He didn't have the same amount of reps. But again, that was a small dose in the middle of the season. We saw how he finished. And again, we could say that in but in a group of 5 conference where Boise State is clearly the crop of the conference, even if Ashton Jeanty did not have that type of year, I think Boise would be in pretty good standing. As we just mentioned, Kel, if Travis Hunter doesn't have this type of year, as good as Shedeur Sanders is, and even though they did do a lot of things well in the offseason, I don't know where the Buffs are without him. So all things point to, I think, in my eyes, the appropriate winner. I do think there is a debate to be had, but I think it's very interesting to say that it's not as close as people wanted it to be. Kind of like what I said, even though it's a much different criteria, much different discussion. I said a week ago how the debate between SMU and Alabama really wasn't that strong. It was more so just this preconceived notion of Bama making it in the past, and we think the committee is always going to fold to the SEC. But again, it's all circumstantial, and that is way more volatile than the Heisman ever has been or ever will be. So I think it's just important to kind of sit back and remember that. And again, a lot of the backlash, let's be real, if it weren't for Coach Prime, if it weren't for the Colorado Buffalo being like the brand they are right now, which to me is one of the best things that ever happened in college football in recent memory. But naturally, you know this as well as anybody, there's been some pushback. Ashton Jeanty, right? Humble, small group of 5 school, Boise State. They've always kind of had this little dog, but they're not really that much of a little dog. So again, it kind of makes sense where public opinion would shift more towards him, but I think they absolutely made the right call. Shifting, Kel, towards the combat sports front, obviously big week, big rematch. You will be very busy with all of it in terms of everything behind the scenes, in terms of everything happening, in terms of the media activity and the fight itself. Just really quick, what do you make of that rematch in comparison between Alexander Usyk and Tyson Fury compared to the first time around? Because the first time around, we have the first undisputed 4-bell era heavyweight fight. First time it's really, we're going to have a unified, undisputed champion crown since Lennox Lewis. That sold itself, even though the fight didn't kind of move the needle the same way we've seen kind of the more circus-oriented fights of the past, do. But in terms of what actually turned out on the screen and in Raieta that night, as good of a fight you will ever see in the heavyweight division. Do you feel similar about it now stylistically, the actual storylines about it this time around, or do you feel much different than you did before they first ever fought back this May?
No, I feel that we're watching the 2 best heavyweights. Mm-hmm. My only thing that changes is the size doesn't really matter.
Right. And we saw that be proved true the first time.
Exactly. Like I leaned so heavily into that the first go around, but Tyson Fury couldn't use his size. I'm not going to say didn't. Usyk didn't let him.
Yes.
And I think Tyson Fury found out, it weigh a lot more. But I'm not sure I'm the stronger guy.
Pound for pound, right. Yep.
Yeah, I think Usyk went in the ring, pushing against each other and clinch work, and he was just stronger. I'm not talking about punching power. He was just physically strong. If Fury get
body leaning against body, absolutely, because there was a lot of clinch work, and we saw Fury even try to use his size advantage in the middle rounds or even the earlier rounds, and we saw Usyk, even with him handling it well, like you mentioned, Kel, we saw that be a roadblock he had to overcome because we saw it with each passing round before that big flurry that pretty much was the difference in the fight, we saw, I wouldn't say we saw him wearing down, but we definitely saw that size advantage from Fury even then kind of start to take its toll. What's so remarkably different is that pretty much anyone else he fights, whether it be a natural heavyweight or a smaller heavyweight like Usyk, usually when he does that, it's enough to seal the deal. It's enough to break the camel's back. While it did take its toll on Usyk, it did not break him. So if that's Fury's best weapon in the rematch and it didn't work the first time around, how are you leaning for the outcome? Do you think Usyk gets it done again, or do you think the Gypsy King actually catches him? I mean, obviously he's never been known for the one-punch power anyway, but given the technical skills, given the combinations, do you think we actually see Fury hurt Usyk this time around?
No. I think
it's tough.
Anyone is hurt Usyk, right? Like,
yeah.
The Dubois one was a low blow. So when you put it in that context, no, I think Fury is skilled enough and the more skilled boxer to beat Alexander Usyk. I think the first rounds, Fury had 5 of the 7.
Yeah, no, definitely. Oh, absolutely. I gave him, on my card, I gave him 4. I would have to actually really rewatch, and I may, have a different opinion. I've rewatched it a couple times. I haven't obviously officiated, rejudged it. Yeah, I haven't gotten my own card. I haven't done my own cards. My own card round by round since I first watched it, but initially that's exactly what it was. I gave him 4 of them. Yep, of those early rounds. Yep.
And it was like again, I'm not going to say Fury was out of shape. I think Usyk wore on Fury as much as wore down Usyk.
Mm-hmm.
And then Fury drops his hands. The reactions and the reflexes aren't what they were in the second and third round, and Fury gets rocked and then takes 3 rounds to shake that off. So it's one of those where if Fury doesn't get rocked, he wins.
Yeah.
But then we have to ask ourselves, when was the last time Tyson Fury didn't get rocked?
Absolutely. It's 100% true. Maybe, well, who was it? I'm legit trying to think. It wasn't Otto. It was
Otto Philippe.
Yeah, that's probably
the last time he wasn't rocked.
Yeah, that could have been it.
He was cut.
Yeah. Oh yeah, that was more of the heel of the glove cutting him than him actually getting rocked with a punch. Yeah.
So he was compromised, let's say, in a fight. So we got to go back even before then to when he wasn't compromised.
Yeah.
So Wilder first fight, he goes down, he gets a draw. Then Helene, he has to battle through a cut, and he's compromised. But even then, that's the result of being hit.
Yeah.
So he does that. Then Wilder rematch, goes down, but comes back and beats the hell out of Wilder, I believe. But did get punched in the face, kind of hard in the first round.
Yeah,
he was wobbled.
But then once he
dominated Wilder,
once he caught him with that right-handed, it was yeah, exactly. Yeah, the third fight he got hurt more than the first fight. It just wasn't that dramatic Undertaker type of comeback, right?
Exactly.
Yeah,
he gets dropped, beats him. Dillian White doesn't hurt him, but that's also Dillian White. Then Ngannou, of course, drops him, hurts him.
Yep.
He gets back up, he ekes out the win against Ngannou. And then looks like he's coasting against Usyk, a way smaller, hurt again. So Tyson Fury's resilience is incredible.
Oh, amazing chin. Yeah, or that's what I meant. Amazing resilience as far as recovering from being hurt, but he's easy to hurt. And that's actually what's interesting, because sometimes what we talk about in combat sports analysis and just, fight media, what really makes a good chin? Is it the guy who doesn't get hurt or get stunned or get dropped at all? Or is it the guy who could push through that? Because especially at heavyweight, so often toughness goes out the window. If you get touched, a lot of times you're going down. The question is, are you going down for the count? And that's what makes it so interesting, because we saw Fury lean on Usyk and maybe drain him a bit. I don't know if we ever saw Usyk in doubt, and we never saw Usyk hurt. We saw Fury hurt and at one point get saved by the bell. And that's a great observation on your end, Kel. Someone with the technical skills, the fluidity, the combinations, the movement that Tyson Fury has, he gets touched a lot. And Usyk has never been known as a guy for his power. Usyk has always been known as the Fury type, the super smooth, super slick boxer who has incredible combinations, defensive skills, and we saw him move at great speed at cruiserweight, and we see him keep that speed at heavyweight. So that's why it's so much of a chess match to me, because you have to think, okay, who's going to hurt the other fighter? That's pretty much self-explanatory. But as we saw in the first fight, how are the sequences, the exchanges going to allow that to happen or going to set that up to happen? That will be obviously the key wild card in this also. You have a strong, obviously it's only Monday. You're going to have a lot of coverage up on the Uncrowned, plenty of, digital stuff, plenty of social media stuff, and you'll be following everything across the board behind the scenes as we get closer and closer to fight night on the 21st. But sitting here on this Monday afternoon, do you have a strong actual outcome type of pick? Do you have a bet that you're feeling strong about? Is there a certain value on the line? Or are you more so just kind of expecting the same story, different verse, Usyk getting the job done via decision?
No, I believe Fury wins by decision.
Okay.
And we see a trilogy.
I love it.
That's where we're going. I don't foresee him getting rocked as he did. My only two outcomes are Usyk by stoppage or Fury by decision.
Okay. That's good. That's great.
However you feel either way, those are the only two outcomes. Like either you think Usyk is actually going to stop him because he should have stopped him first, or you think Fury's going to wise up, not do all the showboating, come out there and just win the round like he should. And then we get a trilogy because Fury has a sense of urgency of like, this is it.
Yeah.
So I believe it's the latter. I think Fury wins a decision. And it's been a long time since we had a very, very meaningful heavyweight trilogy that didn't include Tyson Fury. It's kind of become his thing. So I think he gets his second historical trilogy here. And then now it's more so open to do so, right? Like the Dubois fight, cool, if Fury wants it, if he just wants to say he's undisputed champion at some point. But at this point, winning is more important. And with Anthony Joshua losing, there's no pressing time crunch to go and fight Anthony Joshua, which is different if Anthony Joshua had won against Dubois.
100%.
Like, oh, you have to go do that. But no, there's no pressure. It's ripe for a trilogy. And I would hope the next one would be in the UK, in London, in the stadium. So more people can go and you can really get that atmosphere.
It's a great observation, too, because when you look at Tyson Fury's his career, just the whole journey through it all, through most of it, even the start of it all with the back end of the Klitschko regime, everything about Fury's rise has been in this time where, rise, ascension, and just dominance has been at this time where there are some, potential wild cards, it seems, in the heavyweight division. It never has felt more like a two-man show at heavyweight, especially with what has happened to some of these contenders that we have talked about, right? Some guys who we thought were going to be right in the mix, they've now suffered bad losses, Kel, in the past year and a half. Not to say they can't ever be in the mix in the near future, but it's not a sure thing like it once was. Here in December, it seems way more like a two-man show at heavyweight than it did even just back in May because, again, you had Anthony Joshua pending and all these other things. Now they've kind of gone to the back burner, and all that matters now is what happens in this fight and, again, the pending rematch, assuming that Fury wins. So I think that's a great observation.
100%.
Yeah, I think that's a great observation because it goes to show how in boxing and in MMA as well, but it shows how fast these divisions change because you're not the only one fighting. The rest of the people in your field, in your weight class are also going to be fighting, and that changes the hierarchy as well. That shifts the balance of power. Even if the people we're talking about are ultimately contenders and not champions, they're eventually going to be the ones in the mix. So if they have a setback, now it just kind of further sells home the fact that the only people in the mix are the two that we'll see on Saturday night. So I can't wait. Kel, you're obviously plenty busy with that, doing plenty of work today for Uncrowned for Yahoo. Really quick, though, I have to ask you, as we look forward, let's also look back really quick as we go from the ring to the octagon. Obviously, everything Joaquin Buckley did this past weekend against Colby Covington, getting the doctor stoppage, obviously that was a gusher of a cut, and we saw how it happened. But even before that point, Buckley, an absolute master, just a striking masterclass, looked as good on the feet as he ever has before. Colby, obviously we get it, the toughness, the pressure, the wrestling. At this point, though, I think the division has passed him by. We talked about how his time as a contender is over simply because we saw what happened against Leon Edwards. We saw what happened in this last fight. I don't even think, I get that Colby is such a polarizing figure and, attracts a lot of attention, but I don't think Covington's future really is the talking point here. I'm interested in where Buckley goes from here because obviously everything was Shockwot. Him and Ian Gary just had a tough fight. Gary's on the losing side, but I think Gary's stock actually may have went up after that fight, Kel. And obviously with Shockwot,
100%.
yeah, and I think Kel with Shockwot winning and kind of putting himself in position for Bilal, Buckley is still a ways away, but he's actually closer than I think anyone really would have. I don't mean to speak for you. I didn't foresee him at the end of 2024 being right there in the mix, but he naturally should be, because when you perform like that against a former contender, against a former interim champion, and you do it in the last fight card of the year at a time where, everything in that division right now is kind of changing. Even the champion, he hasn't had a defense yet. We're very curious to see how Belal defends the gold. I think it's a perfect time for his name to be offered in the mix, especially with that call out in the post fight. Bringing up Kamaru Usman, bringing up Shakva. All these are very interesting opponents for him. And even if he would be the dog in those fights, understandably so, Joaquin Buckley's a dangerous, dangerous dude right now, Kel.
Definitely. I think Ian Gary makes a lot of sense in terms of his next opponent.
Yep.
Because I like the stylistic matchup. But honestly, I don't see why you wouldn't want Leon Edwards instead of Ian Machado Garrett.
Right. And he mentioned that too. And it seems like Kamaru got the biggest pop from the fans, because obviously Kamaru's a big public name at this point. He's a legend of the sport. But Rocky is just one fight removed from losing the belt. I mean, that would be a great comeback fight for Edwards, and you really get to see where Buckley is at this point in his career. So,
no, 100%. And one of those things where I took down one of the best champions we've seen in recent memory.
Yes.
Now I really should get a title shot.
Yes.
Against Ian Machado, again, those things where it's like we're both contenders, but what is that going to do? Like, you might have to prove yourself again if there's another injury at the top, or if such a close fight where Belal and Shawkat got to run it back, like you'll be stuck waiting. If you beat Leon Edwards, you're the guy, and you're getting the next title shot.
Yeah.
So I think that's his best move. I am disappointed you didn't ask me about Colby's future.
Well, that's no. Right? Kel, you are the guest. That's just my 2 cents. That's how I was reacting in the immediate aftermath on Saturday. Because even before the stoppage, the outcome, Colby was getting his ass whooped. So I almost didn't need to me it was it was like they expedited the process because it was just so one-sided anyway. And I get when a cut like that, usually with the way he was gushing, most of the time a doctor's always going to stop it. But to me, they kind of just sped it all along to tell us the story that I think was already going to be written, because Buckley was the favorite, not a big favorite, but again, a lot of people, given what Buckley's 2024s looked like compared to Colby's 2024. I mean, really, the last time Colby fought was notably the end of 2023, where Edwards completely washed him. So it's not so much a indictment on where Colby is in his career. I think at this point, since Colby was, popular, polarizing, he comes out to Hulk Hogan. I think and the fact that a lot of people, have their opinion on if he should be a contender or not, still to this point, or at least in the conversation, I think that kind of misconstrued a lot of expectations, or a lot of, just opinion going into the fight, because Colby is at this point still probably a bigger name than Buckley, but the stylistic matchup was all, to me, Buckley at this point in time. Had Colby been competitive against Edwards, maybe I would have felt differently, but that was a year ago when I had that opinion on Colby, and I thought this was a bad matchup for him given Buckley striking. But, I mean, you brought it up before we get out of here. What do you think happens next for Chaos Covington?
I think he had the best fights right there in front of him in his career, where he can be the retirement fight for Dustin Poirier. And he has the size advantage, but, man, the bad blood there is real.
And they've mentioned that before.
That'd be an amazing fight.
Yep, they've mentioned that before.
And Poirier, has been on record saying, I don't want to put any money in that man's pocket.
Yeah.
But the chance to punch that man in the face also is hard to pass up. So I think that's a great fight. And Jorge Masvidal said he's coming back in March. He's coming off of a loss. He's not in title contention anymore. Masvidal's obviously not who he used to be. There was cops called in a public altercation after the last fight.
There was.
Let's settle it in the octagon.
And based off of what we heard, the last quote-unquote fight was far more violent in terms of actual striking and I guess you just say bludgeoning than the actual sanctioned fight was. The sanctioned fight was really just a wrestling match, and the actual fight, the brawl fight, the brawl fight, that's where actually hands were thrown and blood was drawn and damage was done, and you actually had some real violence there. And again, Colby performed brilliantly against Masvidal. Colby performed brilliantly, really, both times against Kamaru, and we've seen him have the big wins over the Robbie Lawlers, the RDAs, the Damian Maias. He has an incredible resume, but that's not what we're debating at this point. It's easy to say, oh, he fought great in 2021. Kel, think about how many guys we can say that about. So it's more so, again.
It's a long time ago.
Exactly.
Long time ago
and
now.
all it really did to me was expedite the process of Colby phasing out in that division, more so going for the big time fights, right? The Michael Chandler, Dustin Poirier type of opponents at this point, as opposed to actual title contention, which is where Buckley is heading the exact opposite direction. So it's an important distinction. I think it's interesting because that division has been very, very interesting for a long time, both for better and for worse. At one time, it was log jammed. A few years later, it was very top heavy. Then a few years after that, it got very well rounded. But then once it got well rounded, you had one guy dominating it the whole time in Kamaru Usman. So, and now you have a kind of a new regime there. So it kind of just sped along everything. And while we're not quite there yet with Buckley, we now have another name in the mix that we could discuss, which only makes it that much better. So definitely something to watch. Really quick, before we get on your little story to explain that Ace nickname for anyone watching on our social media platforms can see, but I have to ask you as we now put a bow on it, because you and I have talked a lot of MMA on this show, just as fans, like forget as media personalities. We have sat here on this show and marked out and have fanboyed out about the big time moments, both past and present, in the UFC throughout 2024. Of course, the wake of UFC 300 and that big moment, and the knockout, Justin Gaethje, Max Holloway. We debated that like for a full 30-minute segment in one of my favorite moments of this past year on the show. But now I have to ask you, Kel, as we look ahead to 2025, what was your favorite moment in the world of MMA or even boxing? We could just say your favorite fight moment in 2024. It doesn't even have to be the best. What was your favorite?
Oh, in all of fighting, my favorite moment this year.
This past year, yep.
It's probably controversial due to
Give
what
it to me.
occurred afterward, but it has to be Ryan Garcia, Devin Haney. Because it's one of those where I said for a very long time that Ryan Garcia would win that fight. And to see how he did it, the theatrics beforehand, I'd written him off completely because of those theatrics. Drinking beer on the scale, missing weight, and I was going to punish him.
Yeah.
And it was the best performance of Ryan's career.
Yeah.
And
No doubt.
It's set him up now for years off of that win. And it's changed the entire trajectory of Devin Haney's career, even though he's still technically young. But no one gives him that credit. No one looks at him the same. So he hasn't fought since. Ryan's the one suspended for popping for several PEDs, but Haney hasn't gone back in the ring either.
Nope.
Like, something changed with Haney that night. It was, man, it's the reason we want four, quote unquote, four princes, 5 count Shakur, fight each other, because it makes for fireworks. And we've seen that now with Ryan versus Tank, and we've seen it with Ryan versus Devin. So that fight to me still stinks. Probably my favorite fight, moment, build, everything from this year.
And I think the 2023, looking at 2023 was the same thing. That lightweight division just keeps giving us really anything from 130 to 140 pounds has given us a lot of gems in recent years, because that's kind of, the stomping grounds, the range that a lot of those guys walk around, and particularly 135, but we also see, guys like Teofimo Lopez, 140, Tank talking about 140. But that whole crop, it seems like year after year, have given us the most interesting things to talk about. You had a couple years, Kambosos and Haney, or Kambosos and Teofimo. Then Haney comes in the fold. But then in 2023, it's all about Garcia and Tank. Then you see in 2024, Tank only solidifies his claim as not only the dominant guy, the household name, but really a top 5 pound-for-pound guy in the sport as well. And yet through it all, it seems like Garcia and Haney, guys who may not be as viral, as popular, as embraced by the boxing culture just yet, but are still very, very relevant names at the same time, and also very, very talented fighters in their own right. It's kind of cool how it's still circled back to that. And it's interesting because I think it's a good thing. I don't necessarily know if like lightweight, super lightweight, that range, that ballpark is the quote unquote best weight class or, weight classes of boxing right now, but it's a endless barrel of content for what we do for fight fans. it always delivers. Kind of like how lightweight and in the UFC, or even for a while welterweight, always seem to deliver on that front as well. Sure, you could say the pound for pound best fighter in the world maybe in this division. You could say it's, at this point, you could say it's Inoue. You could say it's Usyk. You could say it's Terrence Crawford, even with the inactivity. They're well, not inactivity now, but at least before his most recent fight. There's all kinds of different ways you can look at it, but everyone, I think, will collectively agree that it's that, 135-pound range that has all these young guys who are young but also established enough because they started fighting so early professionally that they're actually crafty veterans at this point. I mean, hell, at this point, Tank is like looking towards like post-boxing at this point. So it's kind of interesting, even though there's still some fights to be had. You still have Shakur Stevenson in the mix. You have a lot of big names there, and it's cool because when you have household names across the board there as opposed to just two big names like an Usyk and Fury, and you can make the case, as great as Usyk is as a revolutionary, legendary fighter, he's not even really that popular, at least in the States, right, on a mainstream level. So if you could get those smaller guys who could give you a little more, I guess you could say, quote unquote, viral or a little more social media savvy, it's still good in the sport, especially at a time where circus fights and different things that are, based off of social media and streaming and all that are kind of coming into the fold. It shows that the sport can evolve, but also kind of keep some of its prestige. And that's why I think even, this Saturday is so important with the rematch with Fury and Usyk. So we'll definitely be watching that. Kel, we appreciate your time as always. Really quick here, I want you to plug, since we're talking fighting, I want you to plug your work. It's going to be a busy week ahead on the media front. Just give us a quick breakdown for anyone who's, new to your work or unfamiliar with your work, to the audience listening, watching right now, what exactly the Uncrowned is and what you guys are hoping to accomplish with it for Yahoo Sports moving forward.
Definitely. It's and social media, we have podcasts, we have weekly shows led by Ariel Helwani. If you are an MMA fan or in any type of combat, you know what he brings in that level of excellence and guests and interviews, and it's spectacular. So I am there and running the social media pages, but also get to write, get to vote on the boxing pound for pound list.
Yep.
So you'll catch a lot of my articles, pro wrestling, boxing, on uncrowned.com, with an incredible staff of writers and MMA as well, MMA, boxing, pro wrestling. It's great to be just part of the crew there and get back to writing and lending my voice to that space. The social media platforms are growing by the day, so that is amazing as well. If you guys aren't following it, please follow Uncrowned on Instagram and Uncrowned Combat everywhere else on all other platforms. And yeah, it's great. It's only beginning, and it's really, really fun. Can't wait to see what, 2025 holds.
And it's taken off at a perfect time in what was a big year, calendar year for boxing, for MMA in 2024. And always we have big fights during the holiday season as we transition into the new year. So definitely a perfect timing there for you, Kel. Really quick, 30, 45 seconds. People are wondering, who are tuning in, what exactly the ACE in quote means. And when you go back and watch this, because you're on the phone right now, so you can't really get eyes on it, but when you go back, you'll see it. That is going to be the new nickname that we sell. That's going to be your new that's going to be the stage name, right? That's going to be the gimmick. It's ACE until further notice. Tell us what you did yesterday and how not only is it big in terms of the competitive side of Kel Dansby, your pocket's looking a little better too.
Yeah, it's looking pretty nice this holiday season.
Mm-hmm.
I was on the course. Shout out to just myself with your father,
yes,
who is a frequenter of the golf course I went to, and the instructor there.
Yep.
Instructor there. But I was like, hey, let me go to Wild Horse. You always talk it up. Let me go. Let me shoot a quick 18. Let me get out there. Let me relax a little bit. Went out with a couple of friends. It happened to be par 3, hole 4, hole-in-one challenge yesterday. And I was like, all right. And it's $20 to buy into the challenge. A great cause. Going to St. Jude's. They're raising money for the Children's Hospital. I was like, of course. Here, $20. Why not? And fairly well, but driving is the worst part of my game. But it's a par 3, and I was
send
like,
it.
Cool,
just send it.
Yeah,
grip it and rip it.
Cool, I'll try it. And my boy David Jackson hit it onto the green, so he was getting his money back. So you get your $20 back, and they still make the tour. You hit it onto the green. And I was like, oh, really cool. And next round went up right into the water. Oh, it's a water hole, by the way. So you got to shoot over the water onto the green. I was like, oh. All right, I go up, didn't think twice about it, set it up. I put a little tee there just to give me some. Swung the 5 iron. Oh, love that hybrid. Next thing you know, lost it. promise you, goes left. I was like, oh, that's a little rough. It curves right, bounces right past the water, takes another bounce, bounces and hits the pin, and then disappears.
And we know where.
No one knew what happened, and then everyone lost it. The guy from the challenge ran because he was like recording, which they got to send me the video. Ran to prove it. Went. By the time we all jumped in our cars, he ran. He just sprinted.
Authentication in the flesh.
And
it was.
There is the ball.
It
First
was
hole-in-one ever.
It was confirmed. You got video documentation. There's proof. There's evidence. Cold hard. When you walked up to the cup, your ball was there waiting for you. When you called me yesterday to tell me this news, at first I was just blown away because, again, my father works at the golf course. I had no idea this was a thing. I had no idea this was a stipulation, that this was a challenge, that this was like set up for the hole itself. It makes sense, but I just didn't know it was in effect. Apparently, they do it a couple times a week, a couple times a month, whatever it is. So when you just told me about it, I was intrigued. Then after hearing you talk about another 10, 15 seconds onward from that, I realized, wait. He actually made the hole-in-one. He's not just telling me about him as his attempt. He actually made it. He sunk the thing in.
Oh, I made it.
And I
$10,000.
$10,000 to friend of the show, longtime combat sports journalist, Kel Dansby. Follow all his media work, his digital stuff, his on-air stuff, his written stuff on all the social media platforms, at Kel Dansby, at Uncrowned for Yahoo Sports. And Kel, when we get that video footage, you know where we will be playing it, right here on Go Live Vegas.
Oh, got it. I'll be on. You'll be the first one to get it.
Absolutely. So fun stuff, my man. Congratulations to you. It'd be a warranted congratulations and a celebratory moment, even if you just sank the damn thing, let alone bringing in $10K on top of it. So great stuff there, Kel Dansby. Great stuff as always on the show. And again, follow his coverage all week long, leading up to Usyk Fury 2 and anything else in the combat space. And again, you hear him talking Heisman, you'll hear him talk NFL. We didn't even get to the Yankees today because we could have filled a whole hour on that. Anything in the world of sports, pop culture, professional wrestling, hip-hop. Kel Dansby has an opinion. Kel Dansby has some expertise to share. Today was definitely the case of that once again, and we're happy for him to take some time to do so. Kel, we know you got to get back to work. Thanks so much for joining us, and we will catch you next time. And for everyone tuning in, absolutely, buddy. And for anyone tuning in, we appreciate it. Long day here on the Go Live Vegas front. We appreciate you sticking around a little bit longer for Student of the Game. Again, we have a jam-packed Monday, week in and week out, with Steve Johnson, Jimmy Garino, and myself for the Game Day Huddle. Of course, we record Where the F is Frank. Or is it Who the F is? I keep getting it mixed up. Either way, we have other episodes for podcast recording that will air tomorrow. We, of course, have the phenomenal Midlife Mischief, which aired last night with our guest or a fill-in co-host, Mary, who was phenomenal. And, of course, Raquel has been doing a tremendous job as host. We hope to have Lynn back in action next week. But it's good to know that we have a good relief pitcher, to use a baseball term. I know Aaron and Raquel are hockey people, so sorry about that. But it's good that we have depth on the bench for these type of situations. Who knows? Maybe at some point I may even fill in as co-host. I don't think Raquel will fill in as a co-host on this show, though. Safe to say, as she nods her head in the corner. So again, we appreciate everything Aaron and Raquel do, everything for the Go Live Vegas family. Download our radio app. Check us out on social media. All video content, live and archived, will be there. So just like, subscribe, follow, being in the mix. You see it all right there, whether it be in the studio right here. We could come to you for remotes, different seasonal events, special grand openings, anything for business, anything for promotion. We want to be involved. We want you to be involved. We're expecting big things in 2025, not just in the programming slate, but in all aspects of the business and all aspects of the network. We're pumped. We hope you are too. And as always, we thank you for being along for the ride. And today, that was the case as well. We always thank you for tuning in to Student of the Game. And if you didn't catch it, it's all good. There's always next time, so be sure to do that. Mondays, right after the Game Day Huddle, so be sure to catch that. Our full Monday programming and our whole weekly programming slates is going to get bigger and bigger, so stay tuned for what's supposed to be a big year for Go Live Vegas. But until then, we'll catch you next time. Have a great rest of your week. Be festive, be joyous, right? Be just somewhat happy. It's the holiday season. If nothing else, we got some great sports to watch. So enjoy the action. Good luck on your bets if you have any of them. And we'll catch you back here next time for Student of the Game. Have a good one.